Hey, good morning. This is Elise Buie with Elise Buie Family Law, and I'm here with Billie Tarascio for the Maximum Mom podcast on this holiday Monday. Thank you, Billie, for joining me on MLK Day. I really appreciate it.
I love chatting with you. I will take any opportunity, even if it's live.
We'll have to make sure we zone out anything we would not want to put on our live show.
Okay, yes, we'll keep that in mind.
I see Delilah. Look at her. She's getting up. That's so cute. She's going to be perfect. I love that. I love that you have your helper with you today.
She's a very sweet girl. She's very, very affectionate and used to take care of all my employees. Now they don't come to the office, but she used to take care of them.
That is awesome.
Mhm.
Well, I always like to find out from people when we start this. I mean, let's first talk about your mom's side. Who do
Mm.
you have at home? I know you've got a pile of kids at home.
I do. So, okay. So my favorite is my stepdaughter, who's now my former stepdaughter technically, but she'll always still be my
Right.
stepdaughter. She is 20 and in college, and she works for the firm, and she's at college at GCU, which is here in Phoenix, and
Cool.
she is the best, probably because she has none of my genetic um, contributions, which make for pain in the ass kids. Because then comes my four, and that's Sebastian, who's 16, and Isaiah, who's 13, Alexander, who's 8, and Julia, who is 5.
Wow, you do have your hands
Yeah.
full.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Mhm.
love that. Those teenage boys, though, boy, do they give you a run for your money.
I like them better now. I do.
Do you?
I do. I like them better now. I have so much fun with them. I find like my oldest has ADHD, and ADHD little boys are real hard.
Oh, yeah.
Real hard. And teenage years have been really good to him. He is like the coolest.
That's so awesome. That's
Yes. So there's light.
really awesome.
There's light.
Yeah, I didn't see my light until they got into their 20s, I have to say. My teenage boys gave me real runs for my money. I mean, that calls from the hospital kind of things. And mom, I'm here and there's blue people all around. I was like, hand the phone to the nurse. I'm like, who in the world? I mean, just, yeah, they definitely gave me a run for my money.
So far, fingers crossed that that hasn't happened. They're better teenagers than I was. So we'll see how long that lasts.
I guess it all depends on our perspective, too.
Right.
Well, tell us about your firm. Who is in your firm? I mean, how big is your firm now? I know you've been growing as well.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm a family law firm in the Phoenix area. I think we have 8 lawyers now. It's a team of 20-ish, then there's some contractors. So it's 11 years old and has been just a kind of a labor of love.
Yeah. Yeah. Love and hate.
Yeah, I mean, it is so similar to raising children and growing a family.
Oh,
Like, and that's why I love this podcast, because the things that make me a better mom make me a better boss. And the things that make me a better boss make me a better mom.
absolutely. And for me, it's the flip side too. The parts that are kind of I struggle with as a mom, I also struggle with as a boss. And, same in reverse. I mean, I find sometimes that I'm like, oh gosh, I sound like I sounded when I had, 4 teenagers at home. And,
Really?
oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, we are who we are, but we're better when we use what we know from both. Like I know a lot of law firm owners um, who will run a tight ship at home and then let their employees walk all over them.
Right.
And it's not that different. Like it's really not.
It's really not.
I try to create a structure that allows each individual to thrive, both at home and in my office.
Right. Well, and I think that is the key to all of this. I mean, as far as being successful, is trying to help your team, your office team thrive in the office, but also help them thrive outside of their time in the office. I mean,
Totally
I
agree.
like that whole maximizing your employees and really helping them hit their stride is such an important part of this. But I also find it's exceedingly emotionally demanding.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. Like, so we know that we live in a time when loyalty is kind of gone in general. And that is from employers to employees and from employees to companies. Like, people need to do what's best for them, and that's where the focus is. And so, like, the worst thing for my law firm is turnover.
Right.
The worst. It hurts clients, it hurts everything. It's very expensive. And so, if I really want to keep employees, I have to invest in their happiness. And that's about more than just their happiness in my office, but their happiness with their decision in life to function as they're functioning.
Completely. Well, how are some of those things that you are investing in their happiness? What does that look like?
It depends on the person. So for two people, I pay for them to go to therapy because
Mhm.
I had maxed out my, it's essentially just like my kids, I had maxed out my ability to
Right.
help them through what they were going through. It was beyond my ability to help, and they were continually struggling with the same things. And they needed more support, and I couldn't give it to them. So I, bought a therapist, and I happened to see a therapist who's fantastic and has been so helpful to me. And I'm like, well, you need this wonderful person that's making my life better. So that's one of the ways, and it really does depend on the individual.
Absolutely. I completely agree. But I mean, I hear you as saying coming up with ideas that are kind of out the box. I mean, this is not a standard thing that a lot of law firm owners do. And I mean, I think I have seen, I too have done therapy, I've bought life coaching,
Mhm.
I mean, yoga,
Mhm.
art classes for kids at home. I mean, weird things,
Yeah.
but um I find that that actually speaks to each employee differently. And I mean, one employee just might be thrilled to get that hour and a half a week where somebody is playing with their kids on Zoom and they can just go do something for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it is just like being a parent where, a one size fits all does not work.
Not at all. I mean, I do think though that a lot of parents who maybe just have one child or even two don't always see that one size fits all doesn't work. And I think those of us, I like you, have four biological children and two step. And I mean, it all of them have looked different. I mean, people ask me, they're like, you literally had six children in six different schools. I'm like, yeah, like we did not find a place that fit them all. I mean,
Right.
so it was always, I mean, we had one year where literally it was parent teacher conferences from elementary school up through college. And I mean, it was six different schools. And I was like, mm,
What are you gonna do?
what do you do? Exactly. I'm like, you got to find the school that fits your kid.
Yeah.
And same with employees.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Where do you find when you're looking for employees? Because I would think, I mean, I know for me, that's a big thing, finding quality people. When you as, a law firm, what does it look like in your office when you all are looking to hire? Who is doing that? Are you involved in that? Is somebody else in charge of that? Or what does that look like?
Well, so a year ago, my law firm was on a cruise celebrating our 10-year anniversary. And we were working, but we were also playing. And one of our biggest problems that was identified through our meetings and through our retreat was who I was hiring and how they were being trained. And
Mhm.
mostly they do a fabulous job of pointing out what our issues are and then helping to solve them. And we wrote a plan for how will we hire. um it's a structured plan, and for the last year we've hired a lot of people in the last year. um and it's been just tremendously helpful to start with writing the job descriptions, start with determining what is this person responsible for doing, and then write a 90-day onboarding plan with check-ins at 30, 60, and 90 days to say, if you don't know this by 90 days, not only have we failed you, but you're not, it's not going to work here. So,
Right.
you and I were talking earlier about how it's difficult to fire. It becomes a lot less difficult to fire when you're having a very honest conversation from day one about the expectations, and you're very clearly communicating at different checkpoints. Are you meeting them or not? And if you're short, what do you need in order to get up to speed?
Well, and you just mentioned something in there that I think you and I share. We've never talked about it, but is that whole idea of radical candor,
Yeah.
having those extremely candid but caring
Yes.
conversations. I mean, and I forget the term, it's like challenge directly and care personally, I think, but those two things combined, I think are, to me, they are the golden ticket to everything.
Me too. Me too. Management was so hard until
Yeah.
I found this concept. Because,
Yes.
and I think you have to find a concept that works for you. Like it wouldn't work for everybody, but this is how I want to be.
Right.
So you have to find something that like really resonates with who you are.
Yes. And I mean, for me, when I read Radical Candor, I was on an airplane and I remember I had my headphones on, like, and all of a sudden I was like, yes, this is excellent. And my husband's like, shh. He's like, Elise, what are you reading? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is literally my new life in all in a book. It was so handy.
Yeah.
Just the ability to just say what I mean and mean what I say all the time in every interaction, all across the board. And to have it all in a book, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this.
Right. Right. I was on an airplane too.
I just totally took to that. Well, and I just saw the other day, she is writing a new book, or, it's been written. I think it's coming out at the end of this month. She
Okay.
actually went and spoke with Clio at their big firm wide, 500 people conference. And I cannot wait to read her new book
Yeah.
because I mean, she just really resonates. Well, and I find that radical candor idea really does help with your management of,
Mhm.
I mean, both your people at the office as well as your children.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I was speaking with I was interviewing a therapist yesterday for my podcast, and we were talking about how to help kids with stress and how to deal with defiant teenagers when you only have them half the time. And one of the things she said is first connect, then correct.
correct. Yep.
And I was like, yes, and that is what I try to do with my children. And it's certainly what I try to do with my employees. And it is another version of radical candor.
It
Care
is.
deeply
Yeah.
and then speak the truth.
Yep. Exactly. But I mean, it is the key. I think if we could impart this to law firm owners, could you imagine if law firm owners just across the board could have that care personally before they challenge directly, but then know they're always going to challenge directly, how different working in a law firm could be. I mean, universally.
Yeah. And the thing that is so great is how much your employees appreciate it and want that. All
Uh,
they want is real feedback and more of.
Absolutely. Well, and it's been interesting because, and I know we mentioned earlier, we've been starting to do this EOS system
Mhm.
and, really embarking on that. And I had spent, so my firm is younger than yours. So we're at year 5. Well, starting year 6 in a couple of weeks. So I had always thought they didn't want to deal with all the problems, the this and that. So, I would just deal with all the things thinking I was like protecting them and keeping them, like out of drama or out of whatever.
Mhm.
And it turns out once this whole leadership team has been developed and I've been having these leadership meetings, they're all like, Elise, just tell us what it is you need. What are the problems? Like lay them on us. We will help you fix them. And I'm just like, what? I mean, it has been so stunning to me how much they want to get involved, understand, spot those issues, and be able to help fix them. I
Yeah,
had no idea.
right. Me neither. I mean, and we started that process, I think, in 2013. And I mean, I've had some people join my firm recently who have been at a lot of different law firms and a lot of different companies. And their feedback is, your company is so well run as a company. And we do have, like, it's a pretty well run company. But the reason is because each quarter, my team tackles a different issue and they solve it and they fix it. Like, they built this company.
Right.
I just, kind of facilitate.
When you're not experimenting, because I know you love to experiment.
I do. And so do they. They experiment too because they know that that's another one of our philosophies is the idea that we need to challenge our assumptions and always improve. And the only way to do that is to experiment.
Well, and tell us about some of your experiments. I mean, do you have an experiment you've just done recently?
Yes. I
Uh,
mean,
I knew you would.
yes. So I just did a free consultation experiment, and I had not done free consultations since 2012. So I stopped doing free consultations in 2012, but only recently have we gotten to the size where I've hired a lawyer to do all the consultations, and it's not me.
Right.
And one of the things that I wanted to test was, is having a lawyer on standby all the time who can talk to people real time immediately. Don't remove the consultation piece, the
Right.
scheduling thing. Like, how do we get them to a lawyer and get them hired quickly? And we tried it for 6 weeks, and it was an abysmal failure.
Really? Now, what do you attribute that to? Do you know based on the data you were running?
It's very interesting. So at the same time that this was going on, my father lost his father and needed to figure out some estate stuff that
Mm,
needed to happen immediately. And so he was going through the process of talking to lawyers, and he was telling me and my two brothers about each experience.
right.
And it's so interesting. Like, free consultations are a different experience. They're a different experience for the lawyer, and they're a different experience for the client.
Definitely.
And I saw that through my father's perspective, and then I saw that, as the law firm owner, watching the numbers, listening to the consults, watching how the prospective clients interacted with the lawyer. Like,
Mhm.
so I can say now, this experiment was a little different than when we did free consultations in 2012, but I can say definitively, like, for our firm, we will not go back. We will always do paid consults.
And how do you handle a paid consult? Is it your regular rate or do you discount a rate for a consult?
We charge $250 for a consult, which is not, across the board. And that's not everybody's hourly rate, but that's
Or
what we charge for a consult.
and you find those then do work better than the free consults?
Mm-hmm.
And how do
Absolutely.
you track those? Because I know you also, as loving experiment, you love metrics and
Oh,
data.
yeah. Yeah.
Like,
You can't experiment without data.
well,
um,
I think your understanding of the data and your ability to explain it to people is one thing that helps people be able to relate to you and understand how you've done things. I mean, you do such a good job, I think, of explaining that. And I mean, I see it all the time in the Maximum Lawyer Guild, where I was actually reading a post from like August 2020 just this morning, and you were talking about billable hours and how you handled productivity and in your Slack channel, and all these people were commenting, and I was like, "Look at this." I mean, because people were literally like, "Oh my gosh, I never thought of that." And so I wanna know about your consult data, like, what does that look like? What are you tracking from a consult perspective?
we're tracking the number of leads, the number of consultations, the number of cancellations or no shows, and then the number of conversions, like how many people who meet with a lawyer for consultation hire.
And do you do consults across the board? Like, does every attorney do them? Or okay.
No. No. And I think, it's a different skill set.
Yeah.
It's a different skill set, and it's very different from lawyering. And I think that you need to train the lawyers, and then you need to test the lawyers. And only the lawyers who have that particular skill set should be doing consultations, in my humble opinion.
Right. No, I completely agree. Are you still doing consults yourself, or are you done
I
were you
do I do them I do them only if the potential client insists. Like, they've just been referred to me, they're totally in love with me, they really want to have a consultation with me, then I will. But most of the time, no. So I might be doing 5 a month.
right. And so you have some attorneys that are just good at consults, so they can do those.
Right.
And then, yeah, that makes a
It's
lot of
one
sense.
attorney who does not have a caseload. So there's no, like, the other thing that is hard to do is it's hard to switch from lawyering and thinking about the opposing counsel and, and
Totally.
lawyering, analyzing and arguing, to being in a consultation where you should not be either analyzing or arguing.
Right.
So
Well, now, how do you handle that? I mean, because that's, I think, one of the issues people have is the data around that employee. Like, so if that's a lawyer, they're doing only consults. How do you how do you handle that? Do you look at the number of consults and like monetize their seat based on that?
okay, so this is a great question. Your question is, what are the metrics to determine whether or
Right.
not the consultation lawyer is successful? So I've recently, I have talked a lot about how I've got group goals and
Mhm.
group bonuses and productivity, which you had mentioned. So there's a productivity number, and if we hit it in that quarter, everybody bonuses. But that's the operations team. And so now that I'm moving on, figuring out, okay, I need a whole marketing company, a whole marketing division that
Yep.
is run and operates with the same sort of structure that my operations side had. So
Yep.
that's what I'm working on now. And so how to determine if the intake and marketing and consult team is successful, number of clients in a given month, conversion rates, number of reviews.
Right.
So that's what we're working on with them.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do.
Cool.
But it's that whole mindset of making that intake, sales, and marketing have its own KPIs, its own everything, and really operating like its own fine-tuned little operation
Totally.
under the firm. And I mean, that's, yeah, we've been kind of drilling down on that, and it's fascinating. I mean, I have found the whole process of gathering all that data and analyzing the data. And one thing that I have found so interesting is analyzing the data of everyone's different conversion rates. Because we used to do it, probably, a big mistake. We would have the associates do consults, those same people who would do the work. Well, I
Sure.
mean, one month I just happened to look into this randomly, and I was like, wow, those are some low conversion rates. And I was like, aha, they probably don't want to give themselves extra work. And so
Mm,
then I literally just stopped it. I mean, like cold turkey. I was like, I'm doing all the consults for 3 months to do a test. And I was like, all right, this is not a issue of the leads coming in. This is
right,
an issue of who wants the work
right.
versus not the work. So we're in the process of looking for a consulting attorney as well, because I have found that it's really hard to find an attorney who really enjoys. They might have some of those skills, but it might just be really difficult for them to put on those consult and sales skills, I find.
Yeah. And I've got a training online that's specific.
Oh, I've loved your training. I
It's specific. Like
it
it tells
surely is.
people this is how you do a consult. And then I watch them. And if they stray, if their numbers go down, then I watch their consult and they just need to be reminded. Um, because it's not rocket science, but you have to be disciplined.
You do. Well, because I find that, I mean, I've been through sales trainings, and I mean, I feel like all these years I've done consults. You feel like you know what you're doing. But then I go to this sales training and they were teaching me different things. And immediately within like a week, I'm messing up again. And I was like, okay, I'll go back, and try again. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think there's a lot of habits, that just we
absolutely.
have to get rid of.
Yeah, and because most of us are doing consultations on Zoom, it can be recorded. Even watching yourself back and noticing,
Oh.
oh, I interrupted, or oh, I so obviously wasn't paying attention there. Like, because happens.
Oh my gosh, I have wanted to, and I haven't done it yet. I probably should. I have a few team members where we're having a meeting and all of a sudden I'll see them. I know they like have an Apple Watch, and you can tell they're literally just like ding 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 on their Apple Watch. And I haven't said anything, but this is one of those things, that radical candor. I need to just say like, this is probably not okay when you're talking to somebody. And all of a sudden, it's very obvious. And the other thing I've noticed, which is kind of funny, you'll notice team members who are probably texting each other because they'll start cracking up almost like in middle
Yeah,
school. And I
yeah,
just
yeah.
every so often I want to say, okay, girls, don't you just want to show us what's so funny?
Yeah.
But they'd be horrified. But
I would totally call that out. Much nicer than I am.
Yeah, well, sometimes, I mean, sometimes I have an idea of what, is happening, and then other times I don't, but, no, I should think about that. It would be pretty hilarious to call them out. I would feel like a middle school math teacher though, you know?
Yeah, yep. No reason they should have all the fun.
Yeah, real. Well, tell us, I mean, you mentioned hiring a bunch of people this year, so COVID kind of created a hiring thing for you.
And it caused some turnover. Like it was so stressful that it definitely caused some people to say, I can't do this anymore. I can't practice family law anymore. Or I really want to be able to do this on my own. So I had two attorneys leave, one who left because he was just completely burned out and having a mental health, you know,
Sure.
crisis. And then the other who decided to start her own firm. And she took one of my paralegals. I've never had that happen before. And I have to tell you, it was a new experience, a new level of like getting dumped.
Right. Well, yeah, that's tough. I don't think I've had that. I mean, I have had an attorney leave before, but I don't think I've had one take a paralegal. That is tough.
It was. It's okay, like
Oh, yeah,
somehow always the right people always leave. And that's,
completely.
you don't know it in the moment, or maybe you do, and it's still just annoying, but like the right people leave.
Completely. I mean, I think if you're doing your job properly, leading, managing, and holding people accountable, the right people will always leave
Yep.
because they're not aligning with your core values. They're not doing what they need to be doing, and you're not letting them hide.
Exactly.
You're there caring personally and challenging directly all day long.
Yeah. Right.
And,
And yeah. And for
and
people who can't succeed or aren't succeeding, like the best outcome is them leaving.
absolutely. And it's going to be better for them and
Mhm.
it's going to be better for you because you're not going to be having all this time and emotional drain. And it's so much better for your whole team
Yeah.
because you're getting out that kind of toxic or cancerous
Hmm.
problem, which often really spreads.
Yeah. And that goes back to why hiring the right people might be the most important thing you can do as a law firm owner.
I agree. I really agree. I mean, to the point in my mind that it sometimes means a lot of different things. It might mean you're hiring somebody at a moment that you might not necessarily have thought I was hiring at this exact moment. Or you might be paying somebody something that you're like, okay, that's a bit of a stretch, but this person is golden to me. And figuring that out. So I find being flexible in hiring well is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I took advantage of all of the possible um, financial incentives and perks that the government offered this last
Mhm.
year. And that it put me in a position where I had more cash than I'd ever had.
Right.
And then you have to ask yourself, well, what am I investing in? Like, what are my greatest resources?
Exactly.
And in my opinion, it goes to just exactly what you were saying, like being able to hire the right people, to pay the right people what they need, um,
Completely.
is the game.
Oh, I think so too. I really think so. Well, it's interesting. I have started working with a CFO, Brooke Lively. I don't know if you know her. She has the most well, one, she has this interesting book. I think her company's called Cathedral Capital. But she has this very interesting book that she has a resource in it. And when we're talking about people, I mean, I find this resource, it's silly, the terms she uses, but it is so true. She has people on a quadrant, like you can rank your people.
Oh,
And so like on this axis is the bottom one, so this is your core values. So either they don't have your core values or they have your core values. So at the bottom left quadrant, they're a rat. So they do not have your core values. And the other quadrant is skills. So they have low skills, low core values. So this is a rat. On the bottom right is a terrorist. So they have low core values, but they're great with skills and billing. So they're that person that a lot of times you hang on to, because they're producing. But I mean, they are a terrorist in your office. And it's so true. And then in the top, when you get to the people who have your core values, the top left is a puppy. So there's somebody that has all your core values, but they need training.
Mm,
So every firm needs like one or two puppies, apparently, not a lot, because then you're really burdened with training. But I mean, you always need to be building up your puppies. So then they become the top right quadrant, which is stars.
mm,
So those all have all your core values and they have the skill set. And so it has been a fascinating exercise to go and rank every single person on the team using this model. And interestingly, Brooke and her team, I mean, they have a pretty firm line. Like, if you've got a rat or a terrorist, they're out. I mean, period, end of story. Like, there is no, you know, negotiating around that.
yeah.
And so it's been really interesting to spend some time thinking about that. And I think, just like you talk about, people do weed themselves out if we're doing our job of leading, managing, and holding people accountable.
Man, you just reminded me that I have not been doing the exercise that I am supposed to be doing every quarter. It's it's from Traction, and it's called the People Analyzer.
Oh
Have
yeah.
you
It's
seen
the
that one?
same kind of thing.
Same
Whether
concept.
they get it, want it, and have capacity.
Yeah, yeah. And the People Analyzer takes your people, you put their name down, you write down your core values, and then you rank them on the core values. Do they have this value? Plus, do they not have this value, minus, or is it a plus and minus? And on each of the values, you look at them, and it's a great exercise for leadership to figure out, like, who is a terrorist, who's a rat.
Exactly. And
And
who are your stars? I mean,
Mhm.
who might not be, because I find sometimes your stars can be these very quiet, unassuming
Right,
people
right.
that, but if you can see their value as holding your core values very, I mean, sacredly, then you can really, that's who we should be maximizing. When we're spending all this energy maximizing people on our team. And I know for me, a lot of times I find my energy with the rats or the terrorists. You
Absolutely.
know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
And
And
really,
neglecting the stars.
absolutely. Which, how silly is that?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's hard. And this is where, like, being a mom and being a boss are different. And it's you can't fire your children, so you have to dig in and develop those people, and knowing where you're helping someone, through a tough time, which I think you should do, even if your employees have a period of a quarter or 6 months, or I have a star who really struggled with a pregnancy and birth. It was like a year. It was like a good year that was really not, she was not the star that she usually is, but, like, you don't want to give up on people.
No, indeed.
So figuring that out, I think, is a challenge.
I think it's a big challenge, and I think it's one worth our time, to really sit down and do that, because the more and more I'm coming to understand about the people part of this and truly trying to understand it, as good as my little brain can do, it just feels like that part is so important, being able to identify those puppies and those stars and making sure that you are maximizing them. And I do think of it like a mom. I mean, like, I thought of all my children as puppies, like they just needed a little training and they were going to be okay. But
Yeah.
it was all different training. Some people needed, like, I mean, I had one that ended up in the Marines. He needed a drill sergeant kind of trainer. Like, that was what was going to speak to him. But then I have others that are more sensitive and, they need like a nicer training protocol. And
Mhm.
being able to figure that out. Exactly. Maybe a drill sergeant is what we need at our office. I hadn't thought of that. Maybe I have some puppies who could use some more rigid training than
Well,
we
and here's the hard part. Like, I, how can we as parents, like, you couldn't be that drill sergeant that your child needed.
no, no, I couldn't.
So, does that mean we have different managers in our office for different people?
Maybe. I mean, maybe it does. I mean, for real, like with my child who did end up in the Marines, that child, I mean, we actually hit a roadblock in high school where, I mean, he way into football, had all these great qualities. School was a struggle. He was my ADHD kid, but he was passively rebellious.
Oh
Like
yeah.
he would be super nice to me and be like, "Oh yeah, I didn't do any of that. Do you need me to unload the dishwasher?" I'd be like, "Ugh." But, and I mean, we really, like, hit a wall because I was really worried about him. I was like, "You're really cutting off choices that you don't necessarily mean to be cutting off, I don't think." I'm like, "I've explained that, but I don't know that you're hearing me." And so I mean, he actually it's a long story, but he ended up in a boarding school, and I mean, I very much, like, delegated. I was like, "You're gonna go to this boarding school. It's all boys." Like, they did great with boys with ADHD, like, that was one of their specialties, and I was like, "This place is gonna be much more rigid, and they're gonna be hard about things, but then they're also gonna let you be more of you that you need to be," and best decision ever. I mean, like, I was kind of yeah, I was a little bit at the end of what I could do,
Mhm.
because one of the things I struggle with, both as a boss and as a mom, is not allowing people to have their own agency. I'm like, I want you to be making the right choices. I don't want me to be making your choices and me to be deciding for you. And so with my son, I was like, I can tell you everything that I think, I can help show you what you're doing. But if you're not willing to do it, that's your choice. But we are literally going to be locking heads constantly. And
Yeah.
I thought we would mess up our relationship because of that. And I was like, our relationship is so much more important to me than the grades you make right now.
Yeah.
And but I was also like, I don't want me to step back and not challenge you, and then you not to meet your own things you want, because maybe you need a tougher hand. And so it was a very interesting dynamic, but I think, I mean, and he and I both say that it was probably the best decision that I ever made for him, was because he wanted to grow up, he wanted to be more independent. I was like, go forth and be independent.
So tell me more, like when did he go? What year?
It was in between, well, he went in the middle of junior year. I mean, he was in a massive car accident right before the beginning of his junior year, and that was kind of the turning point of him really just not, you know, doing all the things that I mean, he wasn't gonna be able to play football. I mean, it was tough. It was a really tough that first semester of junior year, and so and I knew, like, if we didn't do something quick, he was gonna have a real different experience,
Yeah.
and than he meant to be having.
Hmm. So the last year and a half was at a boarding school, which is almost like going to college earlier,
It was. Yep,
but
it was very
but
much.
college where they're gonna give you more structure.
Exactly. There was more eyes on him. I mean, I knew he'd be safe. You know what I mean? There was more eyes on him, but it was the super football sports-oriented school, which is what drove him, and for him to get back onto the football field after this accident was a reach. I mean, I was like, "There's no way you'll ever play football again." And he was like, "Watch me."
Oh.
And I thought, "Okay, I'm gonna," so we did that, and he did play football, played his senior year, then went to college and played, and then quit to join the Marines after, because he was like, okay, now that I've gone to college and I've played a year of football in college, now I'm quitting on my own terms and I'm going to do what I want to go do.
Mhm,
I was like, more power to you.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The people part of what we do is the most important and the hardest.
And I think that's so true in home and in the office. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. I mean, the amount of hours, like, I know Doug has spent so much time watching me, like, with this child, Eric. When we went to a conference for the ABA one time in Canada, it was one of those, fun CLEs or whatever. I literally spent morning and night, like, on the phone with educational consultants, dealing with a psychologist, like, because I felt so bad. I'm like, am I gonna traumatize him by sending him to a boarding school a few months after this accident? Like, what will this all look like? I mean, it was heart-wrenching, but the amount of time and energy put into it, but in the long run, I think it was the right decision, but I mean, it was not at all what came naturally. And I find that as a boss, there's times that I'm doing things and I'm like, this is not what comes naturally. Like, I don't fire people naturally well.
Right. So did Eric buy in, or did you have to,
Oh,
you had to
oh,
make, you were,
no, he totally bought in.
oh, he did.
Doug, yeah, Doug actually went and took him out there. It was in Connecticut. So I mean, it was far from Seattle. Doug took him out there. They looked at the school together. And I mean, he wanted Doug to go. I was like, that was hard, but I was like, I'm fine with that. If that's going to work. And so he went and he came back and he didn't make a decision right away. But literally within about 4 days, he just texted me and said, I need to go. I'm making bad choices in Seattle. I should start as soon as possible.
Okay.
And I was like, I will get the bill paid and you will be gone, in like a week. And that's pretty much what happened.
Well, I mean, that sounds like true and perfect leadership.
Bumpy and hard too. You know what I mean? But I think that's one thing all of us can take away from this whole mom, lawyer, entrepreneur. I mean, it is bumpy and hard,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I think, growth is not linear, and it is painful. So
It is.
right before the biggest like growth spurts, and I think, I don't know about you, but like a lot of us are hitting, I think 2021 is going to be harder than 2020.
I do too. I do.
2020 was hard, but 2021 is harder. Like, people are fatigued and depressed and isolated. And, you have that initial like rise to the occasion. We're going to get this done. Oh my gosh, we're doing it. And now it's just like exhaustion and
Exhausted.
depression.
Well, I completely agree with you, and you and I are the first people that I've spoken to about this, but I absolutely believe it's gonna be worse, and I think that I mean, I know at least I'm seeing real mental health, like, cracks in some people around me. You know what I mean? Where I feel like they're really struggling, whereas they were kinda able to maybe put on a good face in 2020, but they're not now. And it's something I mean, I've been having conversations with my leadership team about how do we stay nimble enough to address these cracks that I'm seeing, in because I think that's going to be critical.
So, any ideas? Like, what are you going to do in 2021 to combat the mental isolation and the emotional withdrawal and, that sort of thing?
Well, for us, it's probably twofold. I mean, one, just some basic, more social things. Like we love our social things we do, whether it's our holiday party or we do these Zoom meetings and I'll send out cupcakes to everybody or whatever, just silly things. But we're going to do more of that. We actually have a party planning committee now. And so we are scheduling regular things, whether it's cooking classes, wine tastings, Zoom, I mean, not Zoom, yoga. We're hiring a yoga teacher to do yoga at lunch with all of us. I mean, just random different things. I think that'll be helpful. We really use Slack a lot
Mhm.
for that kind of like friendly, just being close. We have a few channels that are just super, they're just hilarious actually. And so really encouraging that I think is really good. And then staying nimble enough fiscally where when somebody is struggling with their hours, instead of me like going in and being like, rah, rah, you need to do your hours, I'm like, do you maybe not need to do your hours? Should we be changing your pay structure? Like, don't you not want me coming to talk to you? Like, and if this number of hours is the right number of hours for you right now, let's go to that. Let's change your pay. Let's change the whole thing around and not be so set in our ways around what has been right in the past.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I just flexibility um and supportiveness
Yep.
and curiosity. And I think law firm owners should plan to have a larger cash reserves than we did in the past, because
Big
like
time.
we just don't know what this is going to look like.
Exactly. But I think in general, that is very important that to me, having a bigger cash reserve is all about being nimble. and
Mhm,
being flexible.
mhm.
And it's interesting because again, it ties back to the mom thing. I think being a mom requires this level of flexibility because you have an idea in your head of what you think your kids should be, should do, can do, and they don't always do what we expect. And it is important that we are nimble and flexible enough to be able to meet them where they are, not where we think they should be all the time.
Yeah. And it also, your story about your son and writing a boarding school check for him to go to Connecticut, like we can't underestimate the benefits of having a financially well-run law firm that
Oh,
allow you to do what you need to do for whatever your child needs and whatever your employee and your company needs.
completely. Oh, I mean, that's the ultimate in freedom.
That's it. That's the game. That's why we're doing this. But I
Yeah.
see so many law firms that simply aren't charging enough or aren't billing regularly enough or they don't have any accountability for their associates. And you're missing out on the ability to truly support your
Them.
kids.
Yeah.
And
Oh, it makes all the difference. I
mhm,
mean, yeah. I mean, I've joked that, I mean, I started my law firm solely to put these kids all through school. And I mean, I didn't realize that, I mean, most of them went to private high school, then to college. I mean, it's been a whole, but I mean, that's to me is the ultimate in being able to write those checks where they go wherever they want to go and then they go do whatever life they want. Do you know what I mean? It's all about empowering them to make choices,
mhm,
which to me, it's the same with our team members. I mean,
mhm,
I love supporting my team members in their endeavors. Like if somebody wants to go, I have an admin person who's going to paralegal school or, and I pay for that. And I'm like, I want them to go do bigger and better things. And if that even means leave and go somewhere else, okay, that's awesome. Like, go, be your best self.
right. I think I read one comment that you wrote where you really want every person who's ever worked at your firm to be an ambassador for you.
Totally.
And I don't know that that's always possible. When I read that, I was like, oh, I think I'm failing. Like, Elise, how do you do that?
Well, I don't know that it's always possible, but it can be my goal. You
I
know
love
what I mean?
good goal.
I mean, and I think that I know for me, and I'm sure you have too, have past employers who literally, I mean, really made a difference in your life and
Holy,
helped you get where you are today and will help you get where you are 5 years from now.
huh?
And to me, that's a really, I don't know, that's one of those life things I think that really matters, to make a difference in people's lives who you come in contact with on a regular basis, and not just about how much money do I make, how much money do they make, but how can I actually human to human help them get to their next level where they can be their next best self. I
Yeah,
think that's real important. And so, yeah. I don't know if all my employees think that, but
I think you're 1,000% correct. Like, it's an honor to be able to have this role that we have in our
absolutely.
clients' lives, in our employees' lives. It's really an honor. Like, people are putting their lives in our hands, both in
Oh,
our law firm, in so many ways. And how are we making it better?
exactly. Yeah, I say that when I work with a lot of people in high conflict matters as a guardian ad litem or a parenting evaluator. And when I first meet with people, I always tell them, I'm like, it is such a privilege that I am here meeting with you. And I'm like, I know it is just difficult. You're stressed. You're terrified to meet me. You like think I'm going to, be all this horrible stuff. But I really want them to understand. I mean, it is such a privilege to me to be able to help people. I mean, when they're at their very worst, and, to be able to hear their story and really try to understand their struggle and be able to communicate that to the court in a way where the court can see what is their potential in the future. What are the skills they have that they're going to be able to go with, and that they are going to be good parents moving forward, not just what has happened in the past that might be bad, but what is their potential? And I think that's for me. I mean, I love that about being a mom and an entrepreneur because I feel like I would wake up every day and try to think, what are my kids' potential? What is their potential today? Not what had happened yesterday or the day before or a week ago. I used to say we have to kick the bucket every night and start over. because it's so easy to hold on to things.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I definitely had to kick buckets for some kids more than others, but as you well know,
Absolutely.
I had to get a bigger bucket for a few.
They're not supposed to be easy. I mean, we're growing humans.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's complicated. It's supposed to be messy. I don't know. Those parents that make everything look perfect, I don't know. I've got some skepticism for them.
Yeah, well, it can't be perfect. I mean, I joke all the time that I'm just a hot mess all the time, every day. But I mean, I am, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there was so many mistakes along the way, things I would have to go back and apologize. I mean, I've had to go back even just very recently with my daughter and just saying like, "I'm sorry, I didn't even realize I was doing that when you were young," and really having to like, I don't know, make amends and just apologize for errors. I mean, I feel like there was a lot of errors. I
Yeah,
was reading something the other day and I just wanted to like reach into Facebook and like tell this woman, she was talking about how she yelled at her children during bedtime routine and that, she was really frazzled. She said she'd been billing like 50-hour plus weeks for just weeks on end. And I was like, that is just not sustainable.
right.
Like, you cannot keep doing that. And I was like, I said, and it just doesn't matter if your kids sleep on the floor, if they sleep in your bed, if they sleep hanging from their treehouse. It's none of that is going to matter. I can assure you.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
and it's just the amount of pressure we put on ourselves, I think, as moms is intense.
It is. It is.
And I don't even know what ideal we're trying to live up to, but I mean, it it takes, I think, a pile of kids, though, I really believe, because didn't you find with your last 1 or 2, you're like, "Whatever, you'll sleep whenever, like, it'll
Yeah,
be fine."
I just got a lot better at it. And I actually had to become more structured for their benefit. So we all have you know, our tendencies, and I tend to be real loosey goosey, very
Me
principle oriented and very not rule oriented. Like I hate rules. I hate
me
them.
too.
But but that doesn't work well for kids.
Right,
Like kids like predictability and stability, and different kids need of course more rules than others. And
right.
so figuring out, and this was really, it was a big gift of getting divorced. So I got divorced 3 years ago and really got to figure out then, like, who do I want to be as a parent on my own.
Right.
And that was massive. And my house just, it was just massive to be able to like run my house the way I wanted to and really be the mom I wanted to be.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. And it's funny, I'm just like you, super loosey goosey, can't stand rules. I'm all about the values
Yes.
and the moral of what we're doing. And I mean,
What's right at the time.
exactly.
Yeah.
My kids say they're like, you're zany with a dose of joy, minus those consistent rules. And it's so true because, and it was really hard to make myself try to be more and more consistent about things, and because it doesn't come naturally to me. I am definitely, I mean, though I've never been diagnosed, I'm sure I have ADHD.
Mm, yeah.
Just s- push against authority, that whole, I'm like, what is the logic behind that rule?" I definitely create these difficult children.
Exactly. Like I tend to like just encourage them to be rebellious and really think about their
Totally.
choices, challenge rules, and that leads for messy childhood.
It does. It does.
And
It
hopefully
definitely.
it leads to good adults because woo, you get some spirited youngsters.
Mine are definitely older than yours, and I tell you, there is light at the end of this tunnel. There's
Hey.
definite light. I mean, but you get some thinkers on your hands for sure. I mean, don't ever think you're going to be able to tell your 21-year-old just some, pithy little thing that's not going to turn into a 4-hour dialogue about the history of whatever. And I'm like, did I really create this? Like,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing that does is of course it encourages their, you know, their rebellion. And so you really have to have a why behind what you're asking them to do. And it has to make
Absolutely.
sense to them, and it has to be logical. And they're not just going to do it because I said so. Same thing is true with the law firm. And that drives my gold personalities nuts. So I have rule follower personalities that hate the fact that I don't just have more rules that are just more consistent and more universally enforced. And all of us have to deal with ourselves, and it's hard.
It's exactly, I mean, that is exactly, it sounds like you and I are so similar in this regard, and I have the exact same problem. I mean, I have those just line followers who like to stay in their lane and they want to know all the boundaries. And I'm like, well, the boundaries move. It depends on the person.
Yeah, how did it affect the client? And they don't want to hear that. They don't. Um, yeah. So, but of course, our law firms would not run if we didn't have those people, those backbone
Clearly,
rule follower gold people who make stuff work consistently.
they are stars.
They're stars.
I mean, well, and that I think for me, at least for the EOS and the traction thing, understanding that, I mean, because obviously we're in that visionary role and finding that integrator. And I mean, I have found my most rule following person who's been with me the longest. And I mean, she likes everything to be ordered. And it's just, it is such the diametric opposition of me, but it is beautiful because when I'll say something and I'll be off in my, weird land, she's like, okay, that's all great. And we'll get to that. But right now, this is what we need. And we need a decision on this that is going to stay the same 6 months from now. And I'm like, oh, what a concept. You want a decision that's going to be long term. So,
Well, this is where experimenting will save you,
exactly.
because if the rule is we're going to experiment, then the rule followers can handle it.
Yes.
But if there's not a rule and you just want to change your mind and test new things, it's going to drive them insane.
I really like that. I mean, experimenting allows you to be a visionary in the rule following world.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a trick.
Yeah, I think you've come up with something. You might want to contact the author of Traction and be like, dude, we should discuss this because
Yeah.
it really is a trick. I mean, it actually is the thing that's going to keep you engaged, ignited, all excited about all the things, but it's going to keep your rule following stars. They're not going to want to kill you or hang you up or be like, you cannot come to the office anymore.
Right, because it's part of the deal. That it took me a long time. Like that's the thing that drove people who worked for me the most crazy, is that they didn't have predictability, and they didn't understand like why are you changing your mind all the time, which is not good for an organization.
Right.
So I'm more disciplined now.
Yeah, I'm definitely becoming more disciplined and I'm understanding their need for me to not share all my ideas. Like I have to keep them to myself and I have to just let them out quarterly, one at a time.
Yeah. We just had this conversation at my last retreat, which was Friday. Somebody was saying they felt out of the loop, and I said, there's a lot of new things coming right now, a lot, tons of changes in Arizona. It's impacting our business a lot. Like, you all don't want to hear every rabbit hole I run down. So who does? Like, who wants to be in that group? And so instead of picking a leadership team, which really wouldn't have worked with my kind of democratic firm, those people who wanted to talk high level brainstorming strategy opted in. And that will be, a new Slack group and a strategy, a think tank within the law firm. But there were plenty of people who said, no, let me know when it's going to happen. Like, bring me in when it's real.
Right. Just give me my paycheck on
Or,
the right
or
day.
let me know before a change happens, but let me know like when you really know it's going to happen. Because I gave them an example, like we are now allowing law firm ownership, non-lawyer ownership in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
So for about 2 months, I went down the rabbit hole of becoming an ESOP, an employee-owned
Mm-hmm.
employee stock option program, an employee-owned company, which I think would be really, really cool. And it turns out I'm not big enough quite yet, but had I run down that rabbit hole with everyone, for those people who can't stop thinking, like they don't want to hear every single idea.
No, God, no. I mean, I think of all the things in a typical week, the ideas that I have. I mean, I've at least gotten where I write them all down now so that I can save them. And then now I can talk to my leadership team about them all. And, and they're like, oh, this is what you're doing at 4 in the morning.
Yes, it is. And we cannot help it.
I'm like, exactly.
You don't want to be trapped in this brain. You
Ex-
don't.
You don't. I'm going to start calling you.
Yeah, 4 in the morning, I'll be up, Elise.
Well, I really appreciate you spending the time talking with me today. It's been so much fun talking to you. And I always love hearing about your experiments and what you're doing because you are very brave in your experimentation. And I think that is the key to all of this. Mom, lawyer, entrepreneur.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy that we spent this time together too. I hope people didn't mind us just, you know, rambling for an hour.
Well, I appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your holiday and enjoy your week.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.